Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. We want to say thank you to our platinum sponsor, Matter Behavioral Health, out of 265 State Street in Mount Pleasant. Guys, if you're looking for a different recovery center, we highly recommend these guys. You can contact them at 435-462-2781. Man, I'm glad to be back in the studio. It seems like it's been forever since we've been here. So Janessa, again, thank you for your time. Always love having you here.
It's so fun.
It is, huh? It
I
is.
love it.
Yeah, I definitely miss the days that I'm not in the studio. That's for doggone sure. Hey, we got a really special guest, and some of you guys may recognize her because she's been a guest co-host quite a few times on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But so we brought Sylvia. Now, do you want me to say Sylvia Fisk or just... Okay, so Sylvia Fisk, because I know you have a different name.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's my maiden name.
That's
I use
the
it for my
maiden
middle name.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, those Mormons.
Yeah.
Those Mexican Mormons.
Mexican Mormons.
They have to include all their names, so you know their lineage.
Oh,
and if
okay.
I was like my mother's, I would put de Rodriguez at the very end.
Oh, that's
Sylvia Miera
interesting.
Fisk de Rodriguez. Yes.
Yeah.
You include your whole lineage. Hispanic families.
I have a hard enough time spelling just my three names, you know,
Okay.
Alan Ray Richards. So that's why I moved it to Al, because that was just extra stuff I didn't have to spell.
Yep.
Hey guys, yeah, we have Sylvia here with us today, and you know, Sylvia's gone through a lot of stuff, and she has told her story, but you know, Sylvia felt like there was more that needed to be told. So we had an opportunity to bring Sylvia back in with us today and to give her all the time she needs. And I mean, even since since February, you've had so many things happen in your life that it's different when you are on the other side of the addiction, being a parent compared to somebody who my wife, my companion, was battling addiction, and same with Janessa.
Yeah.
You know, it was her husband that was battling addiction. I think it's a little easier for us that if we decide, hey, we're done,
We're out of there.
we can, we're done. But when it comes to your child, I mean, especially for a mother, that mother instinct comes in, and it's got to be tough. But before we get into really the hard stuff or the sad stuff, I mean, just tell us a little bit more about yourself so our audience knows who you are.
Well, I'm from Utah. I was born and raised in Sandy, and grew up in Sandy and Midvale, and moved around a lot. Lived in Mexico, lived in Chicago and LA, and chose to put my roots here. I've been in Bountiful for 28 years.
Wow.
It's the longest I've been anywhere. I raised 2 children there. So I'm pretty settled, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Life. I'm getting old. I think I need a condo.
You need I like that. Do you need a pool boy? I'm always looking for extra work.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right.
Well, my yard felt really big this weekend because I mowed it, and it was like, wow. It's the first time I've ever done that.
Oh, wow. Well, good for you, really,
Yeah.
for getting out there and
Yeah.
and keeping yourself busy, because, again, I know you've
Best
had a lot of
therapy.
stuff.
Ugh.
Now, you have worked, oh my gosh, you did production with the jazz for how many years, you and your husband?
He has been, well, he's been in production. He's second generation. His father was a sound mixer, professional sound mixer.
Oh, wow.
He was at BYU. But since we've been married, but I've been in TV for over 25 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
I sang in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir for 19 years, so I was on this side of the camera. I prefer behind because I really am very camera shy.
Huh. I would have never thought that. Huh. And, I mean, what got you into the TV? Did you go to school for it as well? Or?
You know, a lot of TV movie makers don't. There are schools for it, but my best experience was just hands-on. Glenn, my husband, is he's been doing movies forever. He had a situation where we're specialty camera operators, and he couldn't find somebody to work the camera. The one that was working at the church for the broadcast was getting older and wanting to retire. And Glenn is very, very picky. And it's okay, because he does really good work. He's so good. You know, he's very good at that. And so I said, well, is it something I can learn? And he said, well, sure. But I think he said that more to, you know, because he's not going to tell me no.
Yeah.
So, of course, knowing me, I'm like, okay, I'll do it, you know. And so I went with him to the jazz games, because that was the best place to practice, because during the game, the cameras are off and I could, you know, learn to move the cameras. And so I went to every game, home and away, and practiced. And then finally one of the producers, the directors, saw me, and he said, you know, I might as well pay you for coming.
Wow.
So
cool.
It took about 1.5 years before my husband would actually give me a gig. And it was together. I did a convention, and then we were working graduations for colleges, because we would take 2 of our jib equipment. The jib is like a big crane, and you have to, it's like working this big video game. It's very hard, you know. You have to be watching a monitor and doing zoom and focusing. So you get to where, when I had a regular hard camera where it's just stationary and zooming in and out, it would get real boring. It's like, wow, I can't move the camera. You just go back and forth. And so it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun. So it took a while, but he expected me to be up to snuff, because in the country, there are only, that I know of, 1 other female jib operator, because this is a piece of equipment that is it's very big, and you do need to be a man to operate it, because it's very heavy.
How heavy and everything
yes,
is.
Very heavy, and it's not something that I can do by myself. I would have to have him come along, so that's why we would work together. And the jib at the Delta Center is already set up. You just have to plug it in, do the back focus, and set it up for the set for the game, and you're ready to go. I wouldn't have to put it together. I did know how, and he expected me to learn how to build a jib and to take it apart. So it was a lot. It was a lot. Yeah, it's not just something anybody can do. You have to have training. So it's very hard, and that's how that happened.
That's pretty cool, just to step in and then just kind of go from there.
Learn it.
Yeah, and just learn it. I mean, life is pretty much that way anyway, right? We get out of high school and we're just kind of like thrown to the dogs and like figure it out.
And hands-on. And when I got married to Glenn, I was interested in acting, so I got involved in some acting groups. I had an agent, Sheila Erickson, and then I moved over to Rob Diamond. Gosh, my brain's not working. But I like Rob because he's if he's not teaching acting, he's making his movies, and he's very motivated. He's from LA, movie maker, and settling in Utah. And Utah has a big film industry.
Yes, it does.
And it's kind of fun to be involved.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you know the main casting directors, and they'll call you in to come in for auditions. There was one time when Jeff Johnson, he's one of the main.
He's a big one here.
Yes,
in Utah.
He's the big one in Utah, and he said, "I need a Mexican." And I said, "Okay." So that was the part I played. It was for a movie with Jim Belushi and Ian McShane. You get to know these celebrities.
Did you play a Mexican woman?
I did.
Did you really?
I did, and I had to walk through the restaurant.
Wow.
It was kind of funny.
That is cool.
It was cute.
I've put in for a lot of Jeff Johnson ones, but I've never landed.
Well, it's he does the auditions, and then he has to give it to the producers and whoever's looking at it. So it's usually up to them.
Yeah.
If it was up to Jeff, I'd be doing a lot more. I really want you to have this part. Let me help you.
It's a lot of fun. And I sent you the application too. So I just got an email from Ben Cummins, who
I know
does
Ben.
a lot of stuff. Yeah, he's a phenomenal guy.
Yeah.
He's just a great
He's another
guy,
one that has called me too. Can you come and sit in and be
Yeah.
a sacrament meeting or play the organ or something?
I worked with him on a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
He's the one that brought me in for the second season of The Chosen.
Nice.
And he just reached out to us again.
Oh,
and many
okay.
other people, not
Yeah.
just me. Just
Are you in
lots
the
of other
third
people.
season as well?
Yeah, so they're getting ready to do the third season, and so
okay.
he sent an email out and he said, "Hey, The Chosen's coming back to Utah. This is what we're looking for. If anybody's interested." And I sent it to Sylvia, because she's got that dark complexion. Me,
Yes, I don't need the dark
They put a
makeup.
lot of tanning stuff on me last year.
silly.
Of course, I'm more tan now than I was last year, but
Might get away with it.
yeah, I could probably get away with
Yeah.
it. So,
Perfect.
So yeah, I put in for it, and I put your name down on my list, but I also sent it to you.
Yeah.
And then Andrea, you guys have met Andrea, who's been in here before, so I sent it to her as well, and I'm like, yeah, let's see if we
Why
can all
not?
get
Yeah.
in
We can get
together
in
and be
there.
a part of this, But yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Funny.
Well, Sylvia, I mean, you've gone through a lot of stuff. I know you and I have become pretty good friends, and we've shared some stories together, and yeah, I mean, you had an issue, and I don't think it's this way right now, but with your three boys, right? It's
Right.
all three fell into the addiction type world, right?
Yes. Yes.
Gosh, I don't know how I would handle something like that.
Is it all the substance? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, you didn't get to hear my story until I talked about it before.
Yeah.
Your father had passed away, so you weren't here. And at the time I came in to talk the first time, I was very emotional. I was a mess. I had just recovered from an emotional breakdown. I didn't leave my house in January. I was very, very sick and distraught at the prospect of losing my children. And I have a lot of friends that have had children pass away, and I'm always in awe of their strength to continue to live. And I always wondered what would happen if I lost a child. I mean, can I do it? I was with my mother and I was with my grandmother at different times when they passed away. Both of them, I had them in my arms. I was lying in bed with them and watched as they passed away. And it was very difficult, but I couldn't ever imagine losing a child. In January, my son had gotten out of jail and rehab, and he had mistakenly overdosed, and that brought me down, and I was surprised at how I couldn't take it. I had reached out to a friend of mine who had lost 2 children, and his struggles, he ended up going to jail. He wanted to commit suicide, and even today he talks about his children, and it's just like yesterday. Even thinking of my mom, it's like, wow, she was just alive. And even though it's been 14, 15 years since she's been gone. And so when my son was revived, he had been revived with Narcan. But it was the paramedics. He was with friends and overdosed, and they didn't know how to use Narcan. And so they did CPR until the paramedics arrived. And I just opened up a different view of addiction and how it is affecting the people. I have I have 6 children, 5 sons. And when my first son told me he was a heroin addict, I didn't know anything about it. And I just thought, why doesn't he just stop? It just caused a lot of problems. And we were estranged for a little bit when I didn't know anything about it. About 5 years later, my second son came to me and called me up and said, Mom, I need your help. I'm addicted to heroin. And by then I'd had a little more experience. He was trying to get clean, and it was very difficult to watch him go through that in that time, from when he told me he has been in jail, he has been to rehab so many times. What broke my heart was the fact that I had him arrested and had him put in jail. And it was so traumatic that my little 5-year-old grandson stopped talking. He stopped talking to me. We were very close. And he struggled through that. Then another son, just recently in the past few years, my fear with this son was because he was diabetic and had injections, and he's pretty fearless. I always worried that because of his brothers, he would experiment with drugs. My second son was afraid of needles, so he was always inhaling the heroin. And when he started injecting, he got in trouble again and started using meth, and that caused him to go into jail again. And you know, I have a sibling who's an alcoholic, and the experiences I've had with him, you know, screaming at him, and each time I experienced an addiction situation with alcoholism, it was different than the drugs. Watching my sons on heroin was very awful, but I think that meth was even worse.
Really?
It seemed like my son was getting clean from heroin, took a few weeks before he was talking to me, and with the meth, it was months.
Really?
He was screaming at me. He was calling me names. It was awful. And it just took longer. So, as with anything, like the jib, and with flying, once I start something, I want to know everything there is about it. When my youngest son was diagnosed with diabetes at age 5, my mother had diabetes, my sister, it's in our family, but I didn't know anything about diabetes until my son was diagnosed. I was the one responsible for taking care of him, so I learned everything I could. I did everything his endocrinologist, told us. He too was a type 1 diabetic. So going through Nathan's, as he grew up, his A1C was under 6, and he was about 9 years old, and the doctor, we went in for his checkup, and the doctor said, I want to do a report for a magazine on you. He said, in all my years of practice in Europe and in the United States, you are unprecedented for the care you have of your diabetes. I have never had a patient whose A1C has been under 6 for the duration, all this time you've been diabetic. And it was because we were very, very diligent. This young man, my son, he wouldn't eat if he was high. If his blood sugar was high, he would get his insulin and he would wait. But I think what happened was when he was sick, it was like we were all sick. It fell on me to take care of him. So if he couldn't eat because he was high, I didn't either. If we stopped buying soda pop. We have snacks and things, but we started to eat healthy. But it wasn't just him; it was all of us.
The whole family did. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we all just kind of did it together.
Yeah, that's really neat.
And we just learned to live that way. My oldest son came over to visit one time because he's older and has family of his own. He came over one time and he pulled out a box of cookies and started eating them. And we were just standing there, and he's like, "What?" I said, "Well, Nathan hasn't checked himself yet." And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that's what you were doing." It's like, yeah, we all had diabetes. So it was pretty funny. And I think maybe in a way that's probably why watching my children go through this drug problem, it was also me that felt it too. I'm very connected and have a lot of insight with my children. And my youngest son is actually very insightful. He, before we realized he was diabetic, he kept telling me he was going to die. And I said, really? And every day for about a week, he'd say, Mom, I'm going to go live with Jesus. And I said, why are you going to go live with Jesus? Because I don't know. One day he said, Mom, I'm going to go live with Jesus, and I'm going to be so happy. And he was, just starting kindergarten, didn't know how to read a calendar. He said, Mom, let me see that calendar. So he pulled a calendar down, and he pointed to a date in September. And I said, what is that? And he said, that's the day I'm going to go live with Jesus. And I didn't think anything about it. I told a really good friend of mine and my sister. So about a week before Nathan got sick, very sick, and in the hospital, he started wetting the bed a lot. And I told my sister, and she said, that's juvenile diabetes. I'm going to come over and check him. So we kind of knew, and even Nathan knew. He's like, I don't want to have shots. And he would cry, and he ran out of the house. And when we checked him, his blood sugar was off the meter. So we ran him up to the doctor, and they called an ambulance, and his blood sugar was almost 900. And
Wow.
He hadn't even gone into DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. And they were just surprised. The endocrinologist came in. This was a Friday. He came in the Saturday and was going over it with him, and he said, he would have died this weekend if you would have waited, because I had made an appointment Monday. I thought he had a bladder infection. And he said he would have died. So I told my sister, and she said, what's the date? And it was the day he had pointed to.
My gosh.
Yeah. And since then I've noticed with this young man, because of his ambition, he's like his mother. He's not afraid of anything. He's not afraid to go out in the world and experience life. When he was just turned 16, he took it on himself to get a scholarship. This young man was an honor roll student, straight A's. He was going to run for student body president, and he decided to get a scholarship to go live in Europe. His father's from Germany, their lineage, that heritage. So he wanted to go learn more about Germany and that part of his life. And because everything about Mexico and Hispanics and Native Americans he knew, but he knew very little about Germany. So he started to learn German, got a scholarship, went, lived with a foreign exchange family, and that's, he's never settled down. Kind of like me.
I know a little German.
Yeah?
She's 5'2", and I'm married to her.
Yeah. So he did that, came home, and living the life of a diabetic, it was very stressful. There was one time when my doctor said, you need to go on vacation, you need to get away, go visit your mother. She was living in Washington, D.C. with my sister, who was in the Navy, and she was stationed in Washington, D.C. So my mother lived with her so she could live on base, and that was where my mother passed away. And when my mother got sick, she was on peritoneal dialysis, where you can do yourself. And the process is very sterile. And these bags of fluid they have are so huge. And I'm like, how could she lift that? She tried kicking a bag, and it broke her hip.
Oh
no.
my gosh.
So for Mother's Day, she was put in the hospital, and I flew in and surprised her. And I just remember she didn't know I was there. And she was sitting in a chair, and she was looking out the window, and she looked so lonely. And it surprised me. And so I had to take a minute, and I went in, and boo, surprise, She was so happy. But as she went to recovery, they wouldn't let her do her dialysis. And so they contaminated her, and she got sepsis. And she was rushed back to the hospital. She had a heart attack. And I flew back to Washington, D.C. and met with the doctors and, tried to find out if she could be saved. And it was very awful. It was traumatic. And I flew back to Utah, and I wasn't home a week, and my sister said, you need to come. Mom's asking for you. They're putting her in hospice, which means she's dying.
Yeah.
So I repacked and flew back over there, and I was having very bad back problems by then. Just, you know, the emotions wears out your body where it's already weak. And having a bad back, the emotions of my son being diabetic, my mother dying, I had gone through divorce. It was starting to get to my back, and I couldn't, you know, I couldn't sit for a long time. So I would lay in the hospital bed with her, and we were so exhausted. And she was waiting in her room. When I flew in that last time, my sister said, she's waiting for you because she doesn't know what to do. I'm kind of like the bossy one in the family, even though I'm in the middle. I'm not the oldest. I'm the go-to person because I'm not afraid to get things done. So she said, I'm not going to make it, and I don't want to do dialysis anymore. Is that okay? And she was waiting for me to tell her. So I said, Mom, you are tired. It's okay if you want to go. But I'm not going to leave you here. I'm going to take you home. Because she said, please don't leave me here. And I said, I won't. I'm going to take you home. And she said, but I can't fly. And I said, well, I said, you know what I mean. I'm not going to leave you here. So after about 3 days, she fell into a coma. And we were so tired. And I remember putting my arms around her. I put my hand on her chest so that I could see if she was breathing. And I said, Mom, I am so tired. It's okay if you want to go. And like with my grandmother, her mother came to get her. She was talking to her mother, my grandmother, and I had witnessed this with my grandmother. She watched as her mother came to get her, to take her to heaven. And it always amazed me to experience this, because I realized that as mothers, we give birth to our children. And if we are fortunate enough to go before our children, we are the ones to bring them back to the other side.
I believe that.
Yeah. Yep, I do too. And that's probably, with the stuff that you've gone through here in the last few months, I'm sure all those emotions come back up. And,
it did.
And, you know, you said earlier that you felt guilty for kicking your son out. And, and that I understand, because I felt guilty a lot of the times that I kicked Janan out, you know, because she was drunk. And I don't know how many times I've said it, but I thought it was going to give me peace when I kicked her out, because I'm not dealing around, you know, don't have that drunk around me. But then you're not at peace, because then you're sitting up all night going, oh my gosh, what's going on? Is somebody going to grab her, or is she going to get hit by a car? Or is she going to fall in a ditch? Or, you know, is she going to drink herself to death? So, you know, that brain starts kicking in, and of course, it doesn't tell you anything positive. All that subconscious does is bring up more dirt.
With my second son, before he went to jail last year, I wouldn't let him come home, and he was homeless. And it broke my heart, because when they were younger and we would travel around, he was always very sympathetic to underprivileged and the poor. There's a homeless guy in Hawaii who lived on the beach, and we called him Tarzan because he had really long blonde hair. And my son would always want to give him food and money. And I've always had, excuse me, a soft heart for underprivileged society, because I was there once. You know, I had to be on welfare. I was a single mom for probably longer than I had a father to help me raise them. My older children didn't know their father. He left, disappeared. And so
hard.
That was, I think, going through recently, I've been listening to addicts talk about gateway drugs and gateway experiences. And I know with my second son that his experience growing up was very traumatic. I was married to a very abusive man, and even before I married him, he would leave bruises on my son. And it was, I don't know why I married him, but I think I think things affect us, how we will react. For him, trying to disguise, trying to, use drugs to dull that pain of a painful upbringing. And likewise with my first son that told me I didn't raise this son. I had given him up for adoption. I was already struggling to take care of my other children, and the situation that resulted with this child being born was very painful. I wanted him to have a good upbringing. I wanted him to have a mom and a dad. I didn't want him to suffer, at my hands.
Yeah.
But it was the worst choice I made. I regretted it every day. I thought about this child every day. My older children thought about him too. It was their little brother. And finally, when he turned 18, I tried to find him, and I found him. And that was when I discovered he was a heroin addict. And I felt guilty that maybe if I hadn't given him away, that wouldn't have happened.
See, and I think that's where it comes in before we go to our commercial break. But so I was diagnosed with Perthes when I was 7 years old, and it's like a form of a polio. And I remember how many times my mom told me that she blamed herself for that, like, oh, I didn't take enough vitamins when I was pregnant, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, and I didn't really know how to take it as a young boy, even into being a young man. But as I got older, I started realizing a little bit more about life, and started realizing that had nothing to do with it.
No,
I mean,
sorry.
I'm a firm believer, and I'm not saying this to try to get anybody else to believe in this, but I'm just a firm believer. We all go through these certain steps of life to put us on different paths. Some of us choose to take that path, and some of us decide to stay on that same path that we're on. It's our choices.
Yeah.
But for us to feel guilty for something that happened with somebody else, I mean, I don't know, and I'm sure that there are situations where that comes down to, Brad and I have a good friend by the name of Julie Clough, who also does a podcast, and she helps a lot of people who have lost loved ones, especially children, and she fell asleep at the wheel on Mother's Day, rolled her vehicle, and 2 of her children passed.
Oh my gosh.
And she's told me her story about how long she beat herself up. We've had Shalise Stevens on, and her little boy drowned at a water park with her there, and she talked about how she beat herself up and fell into drugs and alcohol for a while. And then both these incredible women who I am honored to know and call friends, they finally woke up and went, this is how things were supposed to go. And they had both decided to cherish the time that they had with those beautiful kids and celebrate those times instead of dwelling on the time that they don't get.
Yeah.
And I think it's, Janelle could probably help. Well, you could probably even help me with this, Janessa. I think if our Father calls a child to heaven before his time isn't at a certain age, it's because there's something special that individual, God needs them for something, for something else. But it's a hard situation to go through, you know. And even when you were talking about your mom, I mean, when I watched my dad pass, that's the first time I've seen anybody pass right in front of me. You know, I can still picture it. It happened in February, and I can still picture it like it was yesterday. To see somebody actually take their very last breath, it's very hard to take. But
there was recently there was sometimes the church will do a face-to-face with one of the apostles, and Elder Bednar was on there, or David Bednar, and he was doing kind of a Q&A with some of the young adults. And one of them came up and said, he's like, my wife just passed away from cancer 2 months ago. He's like, we've only been married for a little bit. And he's like, what did we do wrong? And he's like, I don't know the answers to that. He's like, but what I do know is that, you know, if they're good, they're doing what they're supposed to, trying their best. He's like, God won't take them before their time. Yeah. And when I heard that, I was like, that is like a huge comfort to me, knowing that there is a purpose. It doesn't just, you know, happen on mistake. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you know, hearing these stories about, you know, people losing their child, I always think, what would I do? I mean, that sounds like probably the worst thing that could happen. I'm like, how would I react, you know? But also knowing they're not going to be taken before their time, you know? Yeah, it
kind of helps comfort it a little bit, huh?
It does, little, yeah. You're like, it was supposed to happen.
You have to realize, too, that it's God that is in charge. Yeah. And I came to that realization early in February as I was starting to get better. I was getting ready to come here for the podcast, and I didn't want to leave my house. Little did I know that the nightmare was going to begin, even more so, involving my youngest son. Not only was he going to start, you know, it wasn't just diabetes anymore. It was the drugs. Yeah. And he had started experimenting with them. You know, it was hard for him to not, when you have two older siblings, and he had already become violent while he was on drugs, and it just opened my eyes to how much awareness there is, not just with society, but with law enforcement. They treat drug addicts like criminals. Yeah. And I just think that was devastating to me. They don't understand that I know this child. He's not violent. He didn't, you know, he left marks on me because he was trying to keep me from calling the police. You know, just, I'm not making excuses for him, but the way they treated him when I ended up calling the police to come and get him because I was afraid of my safety, because the drugs, it truly is the drugs. This was not my son. My son loves me. You know, we're like this. Yeah. You know, he still lives with me. I had to take care of him. It wasn't just like raising a child, you know, where they go off on their own. His life depended on how I took care of him with diabetes. And so when I called the police, they came, and he pulled up in the car, and just the way they arrested him, the way they treated him, it just broke my heart. I was angry at the police officers. I'm like, he's not a criminal. He's on drugs. He's sick. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just that, you know, being on drugs and not managing your diabetes. He went into DKA. He disappeared. And I didn't know where he was. His dad was thinking, oh, he's just on drugs. He was dying from diabetes, not drugs.
Let's get into this on this second part of the show, okay, so we can get into the commercial. But yeah, I'd like to go into that, and I'd like to touch a little bit more on what you were just saying. So guys, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Have you ever been in a car accident? Do you know what to do after being in a car accident? Are the insurance companies going to take care of you? Hi, I'm attorney Rick Heaton with the Law Office of Bobby Udall. I will help you through the process and answer all of these questions. I give every single client my cell phone so they can talk to me whenever they need. Let me deal with the insurance company so you can focus on getting better from your injuries. Call me at 385-330-0226. Again, my cell phone number, 385-330-0226. Don't call the insurance company first. Call attorney Rick Heaton at 385-330-0226.
This is Gregory, owner of Lift Up Concrete, proudly serving the Wasatch Front for the last 12 years, lifting sunken flatwork for both residential and commercial applications. Only fully trained professionals lifting concrete at your residence with the same quality of material and method used at every commercial job we ever do. Don't replace it, lift it. liftupconcrete.net, 801-792-4535. Contact us at liftupconcrete.net, or if you're looking for a complimentary quote, 801-792-4535. Again, 801-792-4535. Again, this is Gregory, Lift Up Concrete Lifting.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. You can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the other side of addiction. We are here with our special guest, Sylvia Fisk. And again, we'd like to say thank you to our platinum sponsor, Matter Behavioral Health, out of Mount Pleasant, 265 State Street. You can reach them at 435-462-2781. So we got a lot, the first half, we got into a lot about what's happened with family and losing loved ones. And here at the end, right before we broke for this commercial, we were talking about, you know, how our, and I think it's almost statewide, it's probably worldwide, how police handle addicts and things like that. And I've been really thinking a lot about on this stuff, and I really get what you were saying. And Jeanette and I, we were at a ribbon cutting for the Other Side Academy not too long ago, and the chief of police for Salt Lake City was there, and he got up and he talked, and we had the privilege to go up and talk to him afterwards. And during his talk, he was talking about that there in 2020, a lot of riots were starting to happen downtown, and
I went and saw him.
Dave DeRocher, who is the executive director for the Other Side Academy, came out, and a lot of the police, a lot of their command center was kind of put close to where their facility's at, and he came out and he was applauding them, you know, for what they were doing and keeping our city safe. And one of his, I think he said it was his sergeant, I think it was his sergeant, looked over and he recognized a couple of these guys. And he went, actually these kids actually looked over and they recognized this cop. And they went over and they says, "We remember you." And he goes, "Yeah, I remember you guys too." He says, "You're the one that arrested us." And he goes, "Yes, I was." And both of them said, "Thank you." Because what you did by arresting us actually helped me get to where I'm on where I got to be involved with the Other Side Academy. And it has completely changed our lives. Now, I know this goes twofolds. And we have some friends that are cops, and I was speaking with one who actually, when I was reaching out to him and I says, "Hey, I spoke with your old boss," because he just retired from Salt Lake City Police. He goes, "Oh yeah," he says, "we used to ride together." And I says, "Yeah, that's what he told me." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm the one that taught him how to ride a motorcycle." Now he's a chief of police. But when I was speaking with my friend Shane, he was saying how difficult it is. Now, there are some officers, because, I mean, there's a lot of good and there's also a lot of bad, and it happens everywhere. But there are some that really, like what you were saying, Sylvia, they look at them like they are the cockroaches of the earth.
Yes.
There are other ones who I know, like our friend Shane, who's retired, who understands that person that's in front of them that's high or drunk or whatever, that's somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's dad, somebody's grandpa. They take things, they look at it in a little different way. And I think that's where society has come in, because not all are criminals, as you know, because your son's not a criminal. My wife's not a criminal, and I watched her get handcuffed I don't know how many times. I know it was the alcohol that was causing her to be the way that she is, because I know who this woman is. You know, if she was that way when I first met her, we wouldn't be married, because there's no way I'd want that.
They say that, when my son was talking to me from jail and calling me the most awful names, my friends would tell me, "That's the drugs talking." And I was like, yes, it is. It truly is, because my kids love me because I love them so much. My children are over one time for a family dinner, and I could hear my children talking in the living room, and they were arguing over who was my favorite. And they were like, "No, I'm Mom's favorite. No, I'm Mom's favorite." And I had treated my children as each one as though they were my favorite, because they are. In their own ways, they are my favorite. My oldest son was a police officer at Unified for 10 years. He was on the SWAT, and he actually helped me through this ordeal with my sons because of his perspective. Yes, there comes a point when the conditioning, it's as a to have a gun, you go practice at images of people, not targets, because if you don't condition yourself to shoot back to protect yourself, you're not going to shoot. It's just, that's the way it is. We're not created to kill each other. It's a condition of the mind. So listening to my eldest son and going through this, last year in December, my son's car was open and in the driveway, and I didn't know where he was. My fear for the last 21 years has been that he will be dead from too much insulin, and I'll find him in the morning. So whenever, when I saw his car and his door was open, and I thought, where is he? I was yelling through the house. I was so afraid to go downstairs. I didn't want to see if he was in his bed. I called his dad, and his dad was gutless and said, "No, I don't want to come over and find him dead." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I will." But I couldn't do it. I called my oldest son, and he said, "I'll come over as soon as work as right after work." And I waited. I couldn't find my youngest son. I didn't know where he was. I was just beside myself, and just the fear. And when my oldest son showed up, he stood in the doorway for a minute. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I've done this hundreds of times. And yes, I have found dead bodies, but I've never had to do this for my own brother." So it was very difficult for him, even with all his years of police, training and toughness.
Yeah.
It really was hard for him to know this could be his little brother. So he composed himself, and he went and he searched the basement. He went outside. We couldn't find him. We don't know where he went. I kept texting him. He wouldn't answer. He had ended up being with friends that had picked him up in a car, but he left his door open. And so for me, that's always been my fear, is finding my child gone from this disease that took my mother and my grandmother and my aunts, and so
gosh, and I would think too, Sylvia, that how much that fear would even be more escalated for you, also knowing
I had just experienced knowing that my other son had overdosed and was survived from CPR with his friends.
Yeah.
I had just gotten out of bed from emotional distress, and so going through this, it was in February, just after I came here the first time. All hell broke loose. My son disappeared. He was in an ICU. He almost died from DKA. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to survive this. The stress is too much for me. I was at home watching TV all day. I couldn't think. I couldn't function. I lived paralyzed in fear. I felt terror for the first time in my life. And I reached out to my friend that I knew had lost children, and it still is a struggle for him. It just, it breaks my heart. And when my son came back from Idaho after ICU, his father he didn't even realize it was diabetes killing him, and I'm like, bring him to me. I need to see him. After he was arrested, I had him arrested, there was a protective order that is now the law in Utah. I don't agree with it, especially in situations where it's a child and a parent. I would have had no problem doing this to my ex-husband, have that protective order, just do what you will. When I experienced that domestic abuse, it was before these laws were in place. They didn't arrest them, and so I didn't understand, how could I not talk to my child? He's got this deadly disease. This is the stupidest thing. And so I was able to get a release from the police, and so I kept telling his dad, I need to see him, bring him to me. They were just trying to get him into a rehab facility, and I said, let me see my son. Finally, my son ran away from his dad, took an Uber to the airport to pick up his car, and he drove home to me and literally fell in my arms, and I looked at him, and I knew it was not drugs. I knew it was diabetes. I'd been taking care of him all this time, and I was furious. And so I got him some IVs of fluid. He was so dehydrated, so sick, and just started taking care of him. He stopped experimenting with the drugs. He hasn't contacted the friends, and but the nightmare wasn't over. The news reached out to me. It was when we did that podcast with Ed Bish.
Yeah.
Ed Bish is my hero.
Yep. He's doing a lot of great things.
He came and talked about his son and how he had never heard of OxyContin. And as I've been talking to Ed, he has referred me to these groups on Facebook, and I was stunned at what is going on in this world with fentanyl poisoning. I'd never heard of fentanyl poisoning. I'm on these groups in the Lost Voices of Fentanyl. In just this past year, over 15,000 members have joined this group because their children, their family members are dying from fentanyl poisoning. This is chemical warfare that has been on us in this country, thanks to China thanks to Mexico. And the things I have been learning, because you know me, I'm not going to do things halfway.
Half-ass. Go ahead, you can say it.
And with Ed, he has gotten me involved in these groups, and I am stunned. I just was floored at the horror that is in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea. Every day I see posts from these mothers, from fathers, from aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents of a family member dying. Not just one, but two, 3. And it's every day, thousands.
The numbers are going up on a continuous basis.
This is the number one cause of death.
And
wow.
And I'm just going to say it. I mean, this is a podcast, and this is what people talk about on podcasts.
Yes.
And we don't watch the news at our house.
I don't either.
But
I don't either.
I am so freaking sick and tired of seeing and
propaganda.
Maybe we'll lose some listeners with me saying this, but I am so sick and tired of seeing all this freaking COVID bullshit going across the screen.
Yes.
When that's not even our damn problem here in America.
No.
Because this fentanyl, now you said China and the Mexican government, but it's also our damn government.
Yes.
Because they're allowing this shit to happen.
It is.
So that's what's pissing me off, is it's like, oh, COVID, wear a mask. If you're not vaccinated, you're poison. It's like, are you shitting me?
You know, and when Ed was here, it opened my eyes to the complicity in not just illicit drugs, but in the big pharmas. Their hands all have blood on. They're covered with blood.
All of them
of these dead people. It's not just drug addicts, and that's what I've been saying. You know, I get very angry when I think about how ignorant society is on the dangers we face today. It is not just drug addicts. It can happen to anyone. The Snapchat, even instant messenger. That's how these children are getting drugs. And the problem that I'm finding is with grandchildren in junior high, and I have a son and his wife that are junior high school teachers. They are stunned at how many students and friends are on Xanax in junior high. And I would like to know why in the hell doctors are prescribing Xanax to teenagers.
You know why?
Shame on you.
It's because of this.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it is that they're in bed with all these companies.
Yes, they are.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And they can only, maybe they don't get a certain pay raise, or they don't get a certain amount of money funded.
Incentives. They get incentives. They get funding. They turn, and that's
to
what
have a certain number. I don't know.
And that's what Ed was finding out. He's like, he took on big pharma. I'm so proud of him. It just is amazing. But there is no reason children need to be on Xanax. The problem is they're in this. There is no reason why a child needs this. None. Because it allows them to have an avenue that's hidden from their parents. And when we start putting our children's responsibility there on other people to take care of them, we fail them. It is our fault. And you
can't underestimate them with electronics.
No, no, you
people
can't.
are like, "Oh, my kid doesn't know how to do that." I'm like,
"Oh,
no,
they all
probably
do.
know how to use your phone better than you do."
Well, I tell you what, you've got a really good point, Janessa, because when our oldest granddaughter was 3, Janan and I was taking her to the park to take her swinging because she loved to swing. That's all that girl wanted to do was get on a swing. And Janan's here in the studio with her. I'm sure you can remember. She asked if she could borrow my phone so she could play a game. And I said, well, Papa doesn't have any games on his phone. She's 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it was silent for a little bit. And then she goes, well, Papa, can I still see your phone?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, but don't you call anyone, okay? And she's like, I won't. And Jeanette and I were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden we start hearing these funny sounds coming from the back seat. And I turn around and look, and she's in her car seat, and she's doing this on the phone. I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm playing a game. She went in and downloaded a game at 3 years old on my phone
have that ability.
And started. I'm like, oh my hell!
With technology, they make it easy for easy for them, but
they're very smart.
It's really scary. The people that are the stories that I've been reading, they're college kids. They're stressed. And so what's the first thing they know? What the problem is, doctors put them on Xanax. So then they get dependent on Xanax to dull the nerves and the stress. Well, it comes time where they're in a situation where they have an important exam. So they're stressed about that. But their prescription is run out. They don't have time to go to a doctor. This is happening too much. But they will go online and they think they're buying a Xanax, and they'll buy one or two, and it ends up being fentanyl poison.
They're
and it's
pills.
deliberate. And they are now passing laws in several states to give life sentences to these dealers who knowingly are selling fentanyl poisoning. They deserve to be executed. You know, I would like to see these drug dealers ingest all these drugs that they are giving to children.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
And again, and it's about the power. And this is a new chemical warfare.
Yes.
I mean, it really is. And if you think about it, it's sad to say, but if you think about it, China's not stupid. Instead of starting a war, they're like, okay, well, let's get in with who we need to get into. So let's figure out a way where we can let them start killing themselves. We won't kill them.
You know,
let them kill themselves.
About 5 years ago, there's a news reporter. She does documentaries. She did go down to Mexico to find out, and she went into called a super lab, and this is a chemical engineer. He has gone to school. He's a professional, but he is making the fentanyl poisoning in these labs. They have protective gear, and you know what they will say? Oh, I'm not going to try that stuff. Oh, I've got to protect myself. They knowingly are making this poison, and it's 100% going across the border to America. Do you see those drugs going to any other country? No. It is China and Mexico that are calling war on Americans using chemical warfare.
It's because they know we're going to kill ourselves with it. That's
yes.
how they're
and that's what they say.
That's
their excuse. Oh, these gringos, they can't give up this stuff. But she goes through and she sees that these freighters are bringing this drug, the chemicals. They drop them in the ocean, and these cartels gather the chemicals, take them to these super labs, and they are developing these drugs, this poison. It's not even drugs, it's poison. It's deliberate murder.
Now they don't even have to sneak it across the border. Our government's just allowing them to walk
yes,
across the border and do whatever they want.
And it's sad because and then they showed the mule, and this is what it annoyed the hell out of me. I could tell this reporter was a liberal.
You can't say hell on this show.
Well, too bad. Well, even worse, she voted for Clinton. So that was like, oh, she's going to let that mule go. She's going to let that mule bring poison into our country. How dare she? And she did.
Yeah.
So I was furious by the end of this documentary with this reporter. She followed the mule, who was a pregnant woman. An Hispanic American woman who was pregnant. And she was a mule because she wanted a better life for her child. So she was a mule with the drug cartels because they pay a lot.
Mm-hmm. They pay
it's
well.
It's over $100 billion industry. Yeah. And we are letting them get away with murder. So this pregnant woman, and she was at the border, and they were coming to inspect her car. And this reporter, I don't even want to mention her name because I'm not going to give her that. But she's like, oh, I'm afraid she'll get caught. I'm like, what the hell? I would be saying, but you know what? They would probably they wouldn't come after her. She's not worth it. She's just one stupid reporter. So she got through the border, and she saw her off in San Diego, wished her well, and she let her bring that poison into my country. I was furious. I'm like, why isn't she held accountable? Yeah. We're just, this is...
Now, I wonder if it's the same reporter because I watched this documentary, this gal that goes in and she goes and visits like the cartels, or she goes and visits like these people are doing all these phone scams and things like that.
It's that one.
And it's to get to society to see what's literally going on out there and how simple it is for this to be happening. If it is
so easy for her to find out, then why don't we do something about it?
We can, but the thing
Yes,
is,
we can.
my big belief is they don't want to because somebody's getting paid. It's all about the power
Everybody's
and the
getting
money.
paid. Everybody,
Yeah.
and you know what?
Yeah.
These drug cartels, the honchos and the engineers, they're like, well, we have bought everyone off. We have the military, we have police, we
the
have
government.
government, and they said it's not just here in Mexico; it's in the United States.
It's
Oh, yeah.
everywhere. It's all over.
Yes.
You know, and it's the shame. I mean, it really is. It's a shame that it has to happen this way. In a way, it's also very intelligent that our enemies saw a different way of coming through. And I was having a cup of coffee this morning, and one of our neighbors came out and was talking to me, because I like to go sit outside this time of the year to have my cup of coffee. And gosh, where we was going with this, but we were just talking about yeah, I know, right? I just had the thought in my head. Just the thought of the drugs and stuff. Gosh, now I wish I could remember where I was going to go with this, because it was kick-ass. It was really good. And now I don't remember where I was going with it. So keep talking. It'll pop in.
Well, I was going to say, you know, talking about the stress and having to have serious back surgery. Right after this podcast, I was on Facebook and I saw a post from my friend Thurl Bailey, and he's a sweetheart. I've worked with him at the Jazz, and we've worked on several projects, and he just is a good friend.
One of these days we'll get him on the show.
He's amazing. He endorsed me when I was running for some political thing, and he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican, but to have his endorsement, he just is an amazing. He gets involved. He has a wonderful family. He has beautiful children. I love his kids. They're so cute. His son would come to the Jazz games, and his daughter would always bring me, you know, oils. And I saw he had invested in recovery. And I called him and I said, I started crying, and I told him kind of what I was going through. And I said, we need to bring awareness about the dangers of drugs. Why? And he made a point. He said, I don't know what, there's something about the LDS community that they don't want to talk about it. And people don't want to talk about it. You know, it's like, but I'm paying my tithing. I've got a temple recommend. How can my child be on drugs? You know, why would they be on looking at pornography?
Thurl's LDS as well.
Yes,
right?
and his kids don't have drug problems, but because his heart is so big, and you know, I have a couple of friends that are very influential in Utah. They don't have children with problems like they go out to support. But with Thurl, you know, he said, I just feel like I have to do something. I said, we've got to bring awareness. And so he said, let's get a task force together. Let's start spreading awareness. And then after Ed got me involved with Appalled and the Lost Voices of Fentanyl, there is a yearly rally. And this started from a mother whose son died from fentanyl poisoning 3 years ago. She said, I'd never heard of it. And I said, I'd never heard of it 3 months ago. But just is amazing how across the nation these rallies will be held every year to memorialize these lost voices of fentanyl poisoning. This is murder. This is deliberate murder. And these children are being sucked into this because they're on Xanax, and everybody takes Xanax.
Something I've thought a lot about that I don't know, this is just from my opinion, but living in Utah my whole life as well, I have, like, you know, I grew up in a really sheltered home. There's a lot of things I didn't know about, a lot of things I wasn't aware of until obviously I grew older, but it was very, very sheltered. But I remember when my reality hit, when it was like I was being, you know, when I was in college and high school, being taken advantage of by boyfriends and stuff. You know, I molested and almost raped a couple times. And then the addiction with my husband and everything. I feel like I was like, why why don't people talk about these things? The drugs, the pornography, the alcohol, and especially in the, you know, I don't know if it's just Utah, but growing up here, I'm like, I know it's a big problem. But like when I would come to people and be like, this is what I'm going through, this is my reality, this is real, and I'd be telling these stories and how hard it was for me, and I had people be like, oh, I don't want to hear it. Don't tell me.
No, they don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it. And it was like, they like freak them out. They're just like, oh, I can't do that.
There's this sense of thinking. There's a stigma that in the LDS community, if you're, you know, when bad things happen, it's because you're not worthy. You're not living righteously. That's why bad things happen. I have had friends tell me that. When I was going through my divorce, when I was in the choir, life couldn't have been more perfect. I couldn't have been more perfect. You know, I was doing everything right. And then all of a sudden it broke apart and I ended up getting divorced. And I even had a friend tell me, you must not be living right. I'm like, what the hell does that have to do? I didn't ask for this.
To do with righteousness.
So this is that's the thinking that Utah has. You know, they don't want to talk about the bad things. It's funny because when I was in choir, I knew so many women that were on prescription drugs. One of my roommates, two of them.
But that's okay because a doctor it's prescription. Gave them to you.
I mean, I knew so many women that would take like half a dozen drugs to wake up and half a dozen drugs to go to sleep. Oh, I've got to take this drug, and then in 45 minutes I got to take this other one so I can sleep. I'm like, what? You know, everybody's taking drugs and they get away with it because it's a prescription. And so it's just sad because then if you talk about illegal drugs or heroin or meth, that's bad.
Shh, don't say anything.
That's bad. Yeah. You're not paying your tithing.
We can't talk about that.
But in the meantime, the people in the choir can take all these drugs to sleep and wake up. It was a joke, you know.
You know, and with us saying even earlier, you know, about the drug cartel or just these drugs that are coming across and people getting paid off. And I know Ed Bish would back this even 100%, but Big Pharma, and I'm just not talking about Purdue who got the Oxycontin going. I'm talking about all of them.
Yes.
They all need to be investigated for murder, to be honest with you.
Yes, I do too.
But just to be honest, and that's just my opinion. Again,
there's a lot of them being protected, though.
And I understand some of us need things. You know, there are certain medications that, yes, people need. I get it. And I'm not saying, because even when you saw, like the documentary of the Oxycontin and things like that, you know, there were people against the people who were protesting against it, saying, I need this because this is helping. No, I get it. There are certain things, you know, my wife has to be on certain medication that really helps her with, and one of them is to help control with her drinking, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
There's a necessity for drugs.
There are necessities for some, but not for everything. No. And like you said, why are junior high kids getting prescribed Xanax?
Yes.
It's because, oh my gosh, life is so freaking
Because
terrible.
parents don't want to deal with their emotions.
They don't want to deal with it,
Because they're expecting them to be happy with a cell phone or a laptop. Those kids need to be outside playing.
And that is one thing.
I was never in the house. I was always outside.
So grateful for with my daughter and her husband and our grandkids. Those kids are involved with many things.
You know what? We knew how to tolerate pain too, though.
Well, because you know we did. You know,
I've noticed that kids we're so afraid of having them feel pain. It's like, why? How are you going to know a good life if you don't experience the bad part of? That's just life. You know, I growing up, I always had ear problems. I had 40% hearing loss, and I remember getting such bad earaches, my eardrums would burst, and I would go deaf for like 2-3 weeks while they were healing. I'm like, I better learn sign language because I'm going to be deaf. My ears are so bad. But Not once did I ever get any medicine. I didn't get an antibiotic for the infection. I didn't get pain pills for the pain.
What did you have, like, back in those days? I remember either
it was a hot towel,
blowing smoke in your ear, or a hot towel,
or you'd put warm olive oil and
big candles, yeah.
or your mom or your dad would just hold you while you're crying. You know, it was just like deal with the pain. But now we're so afraid.
We're afraid of pain anymore.
Well, we're afraid to see our children cry if they're mad or frustrated. It's like, oh well, life is frustrating. Learn to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's who said life was supposed to be easy? It's not.
Something that was
absolutely
that was interesting. My oldest had one of his pets die, and he was devastated.
Can imagine.
And I remember thinking, like, oh, how do I stop this? How do I stop this? Like, I felt so bad for him because he was so beside himself.
But you can't stop
and then
it.
this thought was like, you don't stop it. You just sit with him and don't say anything.
Well, you know what?
So he went and, like, he loves to lay in my bed, and I have this big minky blanket, and he loves just...
See how soft we've got. You know, when my dog died,
so I was
about 8 years old. My dog died, and my dad's a farmer boy, and you know, you had a dog for a purpose. It wasn't a pet. It didn't come and sleep with you on your bed. So when my dog died, he was in the bushes. My mom didn't want him in the house, and he was in the bushes. I remember my dad picking him up by his paws and putting him in the trunk, and then we drove to the gully in Sandy, and then he just threw him out there, and I'm like, and I'm like, gosh, that was really sad, Dad. And he says, it happens. It happens.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So how did you end up? Did you just let it kind of take its course?
Well, yeah, like, I guess, you know, that panic, you're like, I gotta fix it. He's in so much pain. But the thought was like, no, he needs to let it out.
And you know what? I think
cry.
That's the
He needs to.
Yeah.
He needs to just live through
Let
it. So I just sat by him.
It's okay to cry.
And I just was there for him. I'm like, here, I'm here for you. And he just, like, you know, we, like, linked arms, just laying there. And he just cries and cries and cries. And I just sat there. And, you know, the whole time I'm like, I would be like, it's okay, stop crying, you're fine. But I was like, no, he needs to get it out.
Yeah. And
after, you know, of getting that out and then, you know, talking to him about it when he wanted to talk about it, after a while, he was like, okay, I can move on now.
I think that's the problem,
you
know.
It's really hard, though.
It is hard for the parent.
Because you just want to be like, shh, stop, you know?
I don't know why we feel like we have to fix everything for our kids, and I've noticed that a lot. It's like, you know what, you can't fix everything. I got to that point, especially when Nathan was able to come home, and I was taking care of him, and it was his diabetes I was afraid of. I did this interview on KUTV News, and I was looking at myself, and I thought, what the hell is wrong with my hair? And I was looking at it because that's what I do, you know. It's like everything on I analyze movies. I'm no fun to watch a movie with because I'm like, oh, they did this for that. They did that.
Just see what they did to that.
But I'm looking at my hair, I'm like, what the hell? And then I noticed that every time I wash my hair, it wasn't just a hair here and there. I was getting handfuls of hair, and my hair had stopped growing. And I realized that I was not allowing my son to be himself. I was taking his pain and his worry on myself. And I had come to a point where I was done. I had to cut my hair. It's still falling out. Now I get panic attacks going out because people who, not you guys because you just know me now, but people who have known me in the past, you know, my hair was long to my waist, and I've always had long hair, and it's very distressing to look at myself and realize how I had let my children become more important than myself. And I couldn't do it anymore. I remember texting a friend, and I said, I just don't feel strong anymore, because everybody's always telling me when they hear about stories in my life, they're like, oh, you're so strong, oh, you're so amazing. I don't feel strong anymore. I'm done. I've had enough. I reached a point where I had no hope. I have no strength. I don't have any self-confidence, and so it's distressing to just comb my hair every day because I'm afraid I'm losing my identity, and I'm realizing, what have I done? And I let my son borrow a car to go have dinner with a friend, and he was very late and didn't come home. And I was telling a friend, I said, "Lo, I've killed my son." And he said, "No, he's an adult." And suddenly that hit me like a wall of ice water. I realized this son is an adult, and it changed my life. I let it go. I realized that at his age, I was already pregnant with my third child. I was married, and despite all the hell I put my parents through, not once did my mother ever treat me like a child. She accepted who I was and was just always there for me. And I thought, I have to do that myself. He is an adult. I am not responsible for his actions. I did a damn good job raising that child, and it is all on him. And I have confidence that there's a purpose for him. Otherwise, God would have come and taken him by now.
Yeah. You know, and you and I have had a few conversations on some phone, especially when you were going through a lot of your stuff. And even though my situation was a little different because it was my wife, you know, but and my buddy JD nailed it on the head when he says I was addicted to her addiction. Because I was so busy wanting to fix things. I was so busy going, I'm the one that can make her stop, you know, till it got to that point to where a lot of our listeners have heard, where I was coming home from an event and I'm like, I'll get this fixed. I'm going to go home, get my pistol. I'm going to go up in the mountains. I'm going to take my life. That'll get her to stop. And then I don't have to deal with shit anymore either.
Yeah.
You do get to that point.
But you start realizing, and thank goodness that phone call saved me, and the picture, the screenshot on my phone of my 2 daughters and my 3 grandkids really started opening my eyes. But that's where the point gets. And that's why even when I was talking to you about, it's that self-care.
Yeah.
You know, and in a way it almost feels selfish, because I felt selfish there for a while, thinking, okay, I'm thinking of me before I'm thinking of my wife. I'm the man of the family. I'm supposed to be taking care, you know, I'm that knight. I'm supposed to be taking care of my wife. And it was so crazy, because with what you just said, flashbacks hit me from a couple of weeks ago. So it was on a Saturday. We usually spend our Saturdays going to soccer games with the grandkids, or watching their soccer games. And I have a buddy who's a big Marvels and comics stuff type guy, and anytime like a movie comes out, like Doctor Strange or Batman or Wonder Woman or whatever it may be, he always invites people, a lot of his clients and stuff, and he rents the movie thing, and so he invited us out to Doctor Strange, you know, and we go there and we get our tickets, and we just walked over and we handed him our little ticket to get our popcorn and our waters and stuff, and my wife went out to go have a smoke while we're waiting to get ready to go get our seats, and my phone rings, and it's my sister, and she's like, you need to get over here. Mom is just freaking losing it. She's freaking. Now, ever since the loss of my father, she's like, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this. She's just been, and I believe why she's doing that is because she's really trying to keep her mind off of what's just happened. Because they've been together since they were like 16 years old. It's a long time. Now all of a sudden they're apart. So we dropped everything and we just took off. And we got over there, and my mom's sitting in the rocking chair, and you could just see the look on her face. And she said the same thing you just said, Sylvia. I'm like, Mom, what's going on? She goes, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of this. And it was so hard to hear your mom talk that way. You know, and I was doing my best. I was holding her hand, and I'm like, look, you can't go anywhere yet because you're not done. I still need you around, you know, because you can't go yet. Well, you get,
and it's so painful, the despair. You know, I remember going through this, and I know this bothers Nathan. I'll sit on the couch. I can't move. I'm just, just so tired and done. And I know I went through that kind of depression going through divorce with their dad, and it bothered them that I would just sit and watch TV. But at the same time, I'm thinking, I have to rest. I am so tired. We're not sleeping at night because, you know, he's got diabetes. He's going to hate me for this, but he got so low last week that he almost died. And he was reacting, and you know, people would think he was on drugs, but I know him. So I called 911 because I could tell right away. I said, give him the address, and I'm like, he's type 1 diabetic, insulin reaction, severe insulin reaction, hurry. And they're like, ma'am, it's Ethan. I'm like, shut up. I have to, I don't understand how people can stay on the phone when someone's dying. It's like, drop the phone and save this person. So I had a hold of my son, and I was forcing honey into his mouth, and his skin was so yellow, and his shirt was soaking wet with sweat, and his eyes were rolling up. And I'm like, don't go anywhere, son. This is the nightmare I have been living with for 20 years. I'm forcing honey into his mouth. I'm trying to get him to drink juice, and I'm just praying for the paramedics to get there. Then the police show up, and they're like, this is the police. I'm like, I need paramedics. Are you kidding me? Go away. And so I'm trying to save my son, and I can hear the ambulances. And, I live on a busy street, so I hear the ambulances and the fire trucks all the time. And this time it was for my son. Finally, after 20 years, the nightmare. And so they came, and it took 5 guys to hold him down. I had a hold of his head, and I could hear him pleading with God, please don't take me.
This was just last week?
This was Friday. And I said, Nathan, you're not going anywhere. God needs you to stay with me because I'm all by myself. And it took the full bag of glucose in his arm, and when they checked him, it didn't even register on their meter. He was on a glucose meter. It'll go from 20 to 500. 20 is very bad. The normal is between 90 and 120. If it's too high, they need insulin. And if their blood sugar is too high, if it's over 500, then the meter will say high. If it's under 20, then it'll just say low. And so I remember the paramedic saying, it says low. And my heart just dropped. And, they were just so patient, so calm, and I was so grateful. I was an EMT, and I drove an ambulance for 2 years, so I was trying to get my mindset into that. But I just remember thinking, God, please, it's taking so much glucose to bring him back. And
I don't think anything can prepare you for that.
Yeah, I don't know how.
No.
Yeah, I don't know how. But again, it still has to come back to that self-care, though.
Yeah.
There's this quote I found that I wanted to share with you. It says, taking care of my own needs first so I can show up for others with a full cup. And I feel like with your kids, with your spouse, like, you lose that so easy. Mm-hmm. And I remember my husband had a conversation with a friend, and they're talking about, like, what about hurting people's feelings, what about this, what about what if you say this and it doesn't go right, or hurting people's feelings, or shutting people out, or not having people in your life. And they were pretty upset, and he was like, what I've learned is, like, he goes, this might sound foreign and selfish. He's like, but I have to put myself first, mm-hmm. or everyone around me suffers.
Yeah.
Well,
the people I love the most.
It's also
such
an
a foreign
to
concept for people.
It is very foreign.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the example, too, you set for your children when you show that that this is what you do in this situation, you know, knowing how to take care of, if you have diabetes, how to, and he does. It just surprised me that he had gotten so low. The problem is when you get a certain level of low or high, you can't really tell if you're feeling too low or too high. Was he, you know, instead of checking his blood, did he think he was feeling high so he got more insulin? You know, I don't know. But I just know that watching what he was going through, it was insulin reaction. And so you're not able to process what's really happening, and or recognize that you're in danger from your blood glucose being too low. And so he might have been at that point where, gosh, am I just high? And I could tell by the way he was acting before he had passed out that he didn't understand how he was feeling. He didn't understand what he was going through. I could just tell. He can't remember.
He's totally removed.
Yeah, well, he's
separated.
So sick, you know. And when I ask him now, he can't remember anything. He can't remember.
You're like, well,
remember
I
anything.
can. Yeah. I'm traumatized.
I'm traumatized.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you owe your mom a dinner.
Oh, and he's such a good cook. He's so cute.
Oh, man.
I've heard so much about him. I would really love to meet him because I mean he sounds like an incredible young man.
It's so smart.
And I can say young man because anybody that's under 50 is young to me anymore.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, guys, let's stop for a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come right back, and we'll end this thing. So
okay,
stay with us.
Good morning, this is Leticia with Computer Hospital. We are your computer repair experts for both PC and Mac. We are your community resource for all of your computer repair needs. What makes us different is that we want to fix your computer. We also do free diagnostics. We charge a flat rate labor, which means that you won't pay by the hour. All of our computer repair is done in-house with a fast turnaround time, and same-day service is also available. Feel free to stop by anytime without an appointment. We're located in Sandy at 8721 South State Street. Again, that's 8721 South State Street, or call us at 801-987-3993. Again, that's 801-987-3993. This is Leticia with Computer Hospital, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Hello there, this is Brad Neufeld with the Resilience Talk Network, and I would like to introduce to you Taffytown, one of our newest sponsors. Let me introduce you to Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek from Taffytown. We're proud sponsors of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. Taffytown is a family-owned and operated business still operating in the Salt Lake City area for over 100 years. We manufacture some of America's best saltwater taffy.
What makes Taffytown stand out from all of the others?
We have a unique recipe, a whipped-style recipe that incorporates egg whites, evaporated milk, real sea salt. It's a unique product that is flavorful, melts in your mouth, and the best part is we probably have a flavor for anyone's liking, a flavor for any reason, for any season. We have unique flavors like chicken and waffles, maple bacon, frosted cupcake. New this year was a pineapple ghost pepper flavor.
That's awesome. Where can people find out more about Taffytown and all of its products?
You can check all of this stuff out. All of our products are available for sale on taffytown.com. We ship for free from our website, so all of our pricing on there is shipping included. Oftentimes we offer special promotions and discounts to our loyal customers, so do be sure to sign up for an account, and we look forward to seeing what we can do to make you smile with our taffy.
Where are you located?
We are currently located at 9813 South Prosperity Road in West Jordan, Utah, just at the foothills of the Copper Canyon mine.
Derek, taffy has always been a great gift to give. What are some of the creative ways Taffytown can help say thank you to others?
Yeah, if you're looking for gift ideas, whether to say thank you to friends or family, or maybe to your clients after such a difficult or successful year that you've had, you could look no further than to get a gift idea from taffytown.com. We offer pre-packaged gift boxes that say that it's saltwater taffy from the city of the Great Salt Lake, and it tells a little bit about the history of our community and making candy for so long. You can also do customized gifts to pick out just the right flavors or colors of candy for that special someone, and deliver even a personalized message in that box to them. So please feel free to check out taffytown.com for any gift ideas this season.
Thank you so much, Derek. Please visit taffytown.com. That's taffytown.com to find out more about the products and services that Taffytown offers. You won't be disappointed.
Do you know someone who's gambling with death due to an addiction? Do you know someone whose life is being turned upside down due to a loved one that's battling with addiction? Hi, I'm Al Richards. I am the host of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I started the podcast due to my wife's battle with alcohol. Let's just say I became addicted to her addiction. Our podcast is helping people understand a little more about those who have battled addiction and those who are hurting from their addiction. Through raw vulnerability, we share stories that help uncover the root causes of addiction. Shame felt on both sides, matter of the conscious and subconscious mind, continued beliefs, and often confusing paths of recovery. We collaborate with real people and their stories, as well as licensed professionals, to help our audience gain a better understanding of addiction. You can find us on Resilience Talk Network. You can also find us on Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. That's Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look up the Other Side of Addiction podcast.
Go ahead and start.
Okay.
I'll give you a 3, 2, 1 here. So, 3, 2.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Other Side of Addiction. And again, thank you, Sylvia, for taking time out of your day to be on our show this afternoon. And we just want to take this time also, not just to thank Matter Behavior for being our platinum sponsor, but we want to say thank you to all our other sponsors. We have so many. Matter of fact, Big Dog Pond, who is in West Jordan, and also Murray has just come in. So guys, thank you so much for your support. Thank you to all our listeners and Resilience Talk Network. Brad, I mean, our shows are getting cooler because I'm looking at the screen finally, and we've got so many different camera angles and things are just looking really cool. And our web page is just, it's phenomenal, right, Brad? It's phenomenal. Our
really
web page is phenomenal. Yeah, so it's looking really good. And thank you to all our guest co-hosts that come in and take time out of their day and time away from their families to come in and be with us. So, Sylvia, is there anything you would like to share with our listeners before we go?
I hope that if you will take one thing from this. On Facebook, there's a group, The Lost Voices of Fentanyl. Please educate yourselves. Learn about fentanyl poisoning. And like I always say, this is not just happening to drug addicts. This can happen to anyone. Do not trust anyone to give you medicine unless it comes from the drugstore. And even then,
the doctor and
it's just too dangerous. I have one of my friends who coaches football says that there's students that brag about sources of getting drugs. This is how you will die, because it's not going to be a Xanax. It's going to be fentanyl poisoning. All you need are 3 or 4 size of grains of salt or sugar. Yeah. 3 or 4 little grains of salt or sugar. That's the size of fentanyl poisoning that will kill you.
Wow.
And this is what is happening in America. It is the #1 cause of death in young adults. Baloney with COVID. That is what media is telling you. Notice how the war in Russia, the media and COVID, how the formula shortage, oh, heaven forbid. what is it what is it distracting us from? We are at chemical war with China, and they are destroying hundreds and thousands of lives. In the last 10 years, over a million citizens of this country have died at the hands of China and poison.
Okay.
So please educate yourselves about fentanyl poisoning. I'm not talking about prescription-made drugs. I'm talking about illicit poison. It is out there.
Well, and they're lacing it with
They're lacing it
Yeah.
into everything. In
Yeah.
fact, my son in Bountiful, one of his friends died. This is how I first heard of fentanyl poisoning. His friend died of fentanyl poisoning in Bountiful, and it's happening.
Our own backyard.
Yeah,
in our own
it's
backyard.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quit trusting media. You can trust me.
Well, guys, thank you again, Sylvia. Thank you for coming on the show again, and because I know there was some other things that you wanted to talk about, so I'm glad that we gave you that opportunity to come back on the show. And guys, sometimes we get in to some pretty heavy stuff on the show, and it's not that we're wanting to push our listeners to believe what we believe. We're just saying how we see things and and experiences and different things like that.
This is our life.
Guys, take things how you want to take it. And again, we hope that we don't offend anybody, because that's one thing that we don't want to do on the show, but we do want to educate and get people to understand a little bit more of what's going out there. And Sylvia and Janessa, you both touched on it earlier in the show. This stuff people don't want to hear it, and that's the whole purpose of this show, is so people can hear it. We want to get the word out, because there are too many of those, see no monkey, hear no monkey, and speak no monkey. I don't know if that's what they say, but anyways, it's... and
it doesn't matter how much tithing you pay, or if you go to the temple every week, it can happen to anyone.
Well, and that's just life, period.
Yes.
Am I using this phrase right? We wasn't put on this earth, or we weren't. So my wife's helping me with the wasn't and the weren't. So I'm just going to be honest with you. That's how it is with me. It is. So we weren't put on this earth for everything to go hunky-dory and smooth.
Right.
We don't grow, we don't change, we don't become better people without trauma, without bull crap that happens in our life. And I don't know of any soul that I've ever met, and I've met a ton of people in my life, that hasn't gone through some kind of crap. And some people go through more than others. But so, guys, just keep your chin up. Keep pushing. Life can get better. Things can change, because that's the only thing that does, change happens, and change is good. I've been working on myself since 2009, and I'm very, very grateful for that change, because it's led me to where I'm at. And even all the stuff Janessa's gone through with her husband, Sylvia, things you've gone through with your sons, and things that Janan and I have gone through, and I, Brad's gone through challenges with, grandkids who are very ill and different things like that. We're here just to make ourselves better. And again, that's what Resilience Talk Network is all about too, is being resilient, getting through these issues. It's never too late to change. Life can always get better, and it goes back to choice. As both you ladies said, it goes back to choice. If we choose to live in the depth of hell and feeling sorry for ourselves all the time, that's where we're going to stay. But if we choose to have our feelings, which Janessa, you did that with your son, gave him that opportunity. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to get mad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel depressed sometimes. The trick is just don't frickin' stay there.
Yeah.
Do not stay there.
Feel the emotion, don't become it.
That's it. Yeah. Give yourself time to grieve, because we all need it. There's nothing wrong with it, but give yourself that opportunity to get through your emotions and your feelings. But damn it, get yourself back up. Yeah. And get moving. So.
Well, my therapist would say that. He's like, give yourself permission to feel that, to go through it, but then promise yourself, I'm going to, in 3 hours or tomorrow or next week, I'm going to get up and move forward and heal. But I'm going to give me this time, and I'm going to do it the best that I can. I'm going to
There you go.
Netflix binge. I'm going to, I'm going to
Netflix and ice
stay
cream.
in bed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just, have my pity party, the best pity party I'll have.
I watched
There
all
you
6
go.
seasons of Bar Rescue, so I can make a really good cocktail now. And pizza.
And pizza.
But promise yourself that you will get out of it and you will move on.
I agree, and that is really good advice. I love that. So yeah, guys, just don't stay there. Again, when you guys see our episode, please share it. Please share it with just one friend. That's all we're asking. Even if it's a different friend every week, but just share it with one friend and ask them to subscribe. This podcast is growing, and it's because of you guys. It's not because of all of us, and I think it is also because of our guests, because we have some incredible guests that come on, but it's because of you guys listening and spreading the word. Gosh, just to get phone calls from people out of California or different places saying, I heard about your show, I'm interested in being a guest. That's really, really cool.
So awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome, and we're just very grateful for it. So we're going to leave with this as we do every week. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing. Recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.
Awesome.